Today, we are very honored to have with us Stephen Hendrickson, who is the class of 64. So correct anything you've been sent that says 63. Stephen, you've said that you've always been a theater kid. Tell us more.
Well, I'd say that's true. From childhood, with my parents exposed me to theater and to particularly to dance and performance, as they had good friends who were ballet teachers. Their studio was adjacent to our house when I was growing up. I mean, literally from birth to 4 years old. So I was exposed to that very early. And as I grew up in Dayton, this is the real foundation of it. Dayton obviously is adjacent to Yellow Springs. So when I was older, I had an aunt and an uncle who were Antioch students who also had grown up in Dayton. We would visit them in Yellow Springs. And also it was the years that the Shakespeare Festival was in operation. So often in the summer, we would attend at least one or more of the outdoor in front of main building, Arthur Lithgow produced Shakespeare productions. So I was very, very familiar with Antioch and Yellow Springs growing up. And I was also aware of the Foundry, because occasionally we would see things in the Foundry. I remember a production that John Cordy did. That impressed me. So I was gung-ho to go to Antioch because of the theater department, and Dal and Paul and Whitney became my mentors for all 5 years that I was there, and guided me in all the areas that were their expertise, and learned about lighting and design from Whitney, and of course the famous courses in style from Paul, and worked with Dal on many of his productions, lighting them. So they were my first and most important influences in theater training. I had done a number of different things at Antioch in the theater, and the first season or two of the amphitheater. But somewhere, maybe it was 62, 63, I can't remember the year. Nancy remembers better than I do. But Nancy Meckler, who's joined our group, was going to direct the Fantastics, and I was asked to design it in the amphitheater. So this is a picture from that production of the set. Obviously, it's daytime. And I wanted to show that because it shows that how I solved the problem in the amphitheater of creating intimacy in the set and in the lighting. The amphitheater, as you may remember, those of you who had been there and worked there, that the lighting was basically from the top of the seating and the top of the theater down to the stage, which created light all over the place. And it was very hard to focus intimately with lighting in a small area on the stage. So I came up with the idea of putting beams over the set and lighting from that. So go to the next. There, that's the set from the, so you can see the little lights over the set. Go to the next. And that's from the back of the psych, looking down over the set up at the seat. Obviously, we all remember the light booth up there with the butterfly roof. Go ahead. So here is El Gallo and the girl perched on the front porch of the little house that we have there. And it's hard to tell just from the picture because it doesn't show the whole stage, but it is an example of how I was able to combine the lighting in a very small area and not have it spread all over the amphitheater, because this is a show with only 6 people in it, very intimate relationships between each of the pairs of the 2 fathers, the 2 young lovers, and then the El Gallo and the kind of theme character who leads us through the story. It never needs a big full stage moment the way a Shakespeare play or the Greek plays or a play with a larger cast needs a larger space and larger air around it. So we could go ahead from that and picture the little drop that you see when you come into the theater, and the meme character. I'm not sure what else to call him. Nancy, maybe you know what to call him. At any rate, that's taken down, and then we have the little representation of a house that is the story of the two families that live next to each other. This is one of the last things I did that year at Antioch. And then the next summer season, I was designer for the whole summer. But I also went to, after that, I went to Yale Drama School in design, entering there in '64. In that first year at Yale, there was a competition to design a model of a set that would be first a competition in New York, and then the winning models in New York, I believe there were 4 of them out of maybe 30 or so, was sent to Paris to an international stage design competition. And this is my model for JB, the Archibald MacLeish play. And it's an abstract vision of a circus. And the background, because this was the height of the Vietnam War, the background is a collage of headlines and photographs of war, of airplanes, of death and destruction, penciled words on it, which served as a backdrop to the, the story of JB and the way his life ends in tragedy. It was his family killed, and so forth. So, and there also were little lights built into this, the light model, which gave it a different look from what most of the other models were. So at any rate, I won the Paris Biennale, and I was given a 3-month stipend to travel in Europe.
I just want to say how grateful and how beautiful and how thankful I am to have known you guys. And I am so proud, Steve and Callista, of everything I've seen and everything you've done and everything that God has led you to. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You're always in our thoughts, Whitney.
And you in mine, and you in mine. And I do remember on Wall Street, well, in New York, I was visiting the same week that you received that award for JB. And I saw the set. I think you had the set. And I visited with you and Callista at that time in New York. I don't remember exactly when it was, but I was very, very grateful for being there.
So the middle of my Yale years, I took off to Paris and lived as a student for the 3 months that I was there. Yale didn't begin to understand the concept of being away from campus for 3 months. Absolutely a part of my life. And they fought me on that. But nevertheless, I said, I'm going anyway. So I did. And then I prepared a big report on all the shows that I had seen and all the cities I had been to and the theaters I had visited. And my design teacher, Donald Owenslager, very graciously gave me introductions to various European theater people. So I was able to participate in all of that.
Did you come out of that with a sense of the difference in theater in Europe versus the US?
And particularly, I suppose the things that I chose to see were not what you would call the boulevard theater and what we would call, the Broadway comedies and musicals. I tended to see opera or avant-garde theater. I went to Berlin, to East Berlin, and saw the Berliner Ensemble. I saw avant-garde productions in Paris. I had a brief stay in London, and I saw the Old Vic. When I was in Paris, I went to Comédie Française. So I was looking for classical theater and avant-garde theater and staging techniques in Europe, which I felt were vastly different and much advanced from anything I had seen in New York and my limited experience in the United States. So it was very eye-opening for me as a student. We could go to the next pictures. So when that was finished and I was back from Europe, and Dal and I guess had spoken, and he wanted to do JB in the amphitheater. And as I had done that model and had a successful design, then I adapted it to the amphitheater. And you can see here, I had a giant telephone pole installed and lighting was suspended from that. Go to the next picture. And here again, we were able in the amphitheater to create a real sense of intimacy on the circular circus platform, while the audience in the house were kept relatively dark. Go ahead.
Dal was JB.
No, Patrick Engel was JB.
Okay.
So again, based on my experience lighting Fantastics, you can see at the top of the picture here, I put a pipe coming out of that circus pole that had a lot of the lighting on it. So again, we were able to contain it within, which I think helped a lot for that play. Then that same summer, which was the summer of 66, we did Waiting for Godot. And here you can see I had two poles in with lights on it. This is a rough sketch, the concept of the road that the Estragon and all of them are waiting on. And the amphitheater cyc is draped in black so that it disappears. So you can go next. So these are black and white pictures which don't really reveal it, but this giant curved raked floor was entirely covered in rusted tin that I got at a junkyard, and we nailed it down to this floor, and it crunchy, noisy sound as you walked on it, which indicated the road. And you can just see a faint line going across it. That is a little yellow line that I painted to indicate the road. And you can see a little faint thing standing up, which was a welded piece of metal that Hal Wells, who was an Antioch sculptor, welded for me to make the tree, the lonely tree that they sit under. Go ahead with the pit under. Go ahead with the pictures. And here they are. That's Bottoms on the left side as Lucky. And I think it's Leon Holster on the right-hand side. So
didn't the floor make a lot of noise?
It did, but they used it. They would stomp on it and and use the sound of it. So let's just hold here. After leaving Yale, I then worked in theater and various regional theaters in Buffalo, in Los Angeles, in Hartford, a lot of different cities doing theater. Eventually in '68, we moved back to New York. And after a year or so, I got into the set design union, which everybody in film you have to join the union to work professionally. Once I did, I discovered that I could work in film. So I started out just as a painter on a paint crew. on a film that was being done in New York. And at some point during that work, one of the art directors came down to the paint floor and said, you know, we need a draftsman. Does anybody here know how to draft? And I said, well, I do. I know how to draw. So he said, well, come upstairs. Here's a drawing table, whatever. And I went to work and I stayed. I basically say I never left. So that was my transition to an entry position in the design department into the art department of working in film. So I did a lot over the years of the 70s into the 80s. I did a number of movies, and I've just picked out these titles to show you and talk about them. And the reason I'm selecting them is that each one of them is actually, I'm happy to say, seen as a classic of its kind from that period. And to back that up, 4 of them have been remade. Going in Style, which was George Burns, Art Carney, and Lee Strasberg, 3 old guys living on Social Security who decide to rob a bank. And they do rob the bank and they go to Las Vegas with the money that they got away with. That has been remade a few years ago with entirely different stars, obviously, and a different point of view, but the same story repeated. Arthur, which was a very successful comedy with Dudley Moore and John Gielgud, has been remade twice, neither one as successful as the first one. Annie, which I did for Disney ABC television, that was the second filmed production of Annie. The first one was done in 1980. This was done in the early 2000s, and it's been remade twice since then. Wall Street was remade by Oliver Stone a few years ago. And it is known as the classic Wall Street movie with the Gordon Gekko character and greed is good as the tagline that everyone knows and is constantly referred to in any kind of financial articles or Wall Street Journal or anything talking about Wall Street. They will refer to Gekko and greed is good. And his wardrobe, which was also very distinctive. And lastly, at the other end of the spectrum, the classic of Can't Stop the Music, which it was the story of the village people and an imaginary putting together of how they formed their group and became somewhat successful. It was such a basically terrible movie that the Harvard Lampoon created an award called the Razzie, and that was the first Razzie Award they have since given every single year since to what movie they determine is the worst movie of the year. It was the first terrible movie. However, it is a classic that is regularly shown in gay film festivals throughout the world. And I also was told by one of my friends who's watching right now that she happened to be in China years ago and saw it broadcast on television in China. Karen, can you join in? They're muted, so they can't. Okay. Anyway.
Yes, I saw it. I was in a group with young singers and dancers, and we came to China as a, could you turn that on? As a goodwill tour. And it was with, they had something with Hershey Park, and Hershey Park had a group of dancers and singers that I was part of, and we came to China, and for Thanksgiving as a treat, they played Can't Stop the Music for our group on Chinese television. I can't believe that anybody would understand what was going on there.
Well, it had its charms around the world.
Yes.
So those are
Wait,
some of,
before you leave the films, could
yeah.
you talk about working with the Muppets?
Yes.
the Muppets and Karen also worked on that movie.
Yes.
Did Callista, my wife. Muppets Take Manhattan has not been remade. It is in its own perfect form. The other interesting thing I can point out about these movies, Going in Style, Muppets Take Manhattan, Annie, and Arthur, and Can't Stop the Music, all 5 were directed by first-time directors.
Mm.
Oliver Stone, of course, was not a first-time director on Wall Street. He had just won the Academy Award for Platoon, in fact, for directing. But all of the others had never directed before.
Mm.
So that is always a challenge, but I was kind of known as the guy they would give to the first-time directors for some reason. But they were all good experiences. And so Frank Oz directed Muppets Take Manhattan. Jim Henson was part of it, but he was not the director. He, of course, played his characters, and he was kind of choreographer of the very famous rats making pancakes in the kitchen sequence, skating around on the hot plate and pouring pancake batter. But it was a incredibly fun experience, and it's a gigantic production, which we have looked at recently just to refamiliarize ourselves with it. And both Callista and I were surprised at how big it is and how many people are in every scene and how many puppets are working. It's remarkably large movie, but it's really a kind of, it's a parody of the Judy Garland, Mickey Rooney, let's put on a show, summer stock kind of idea that the college kids come to New York thinking they'll just walk into Broadway and put on a big show. So it's that very innocent view of a life in show business. They do experience a few downs, but mostly it's positive, up, up, up. And then sure enough, once Kermit recovers from his amnesia by a big thrown across the room by Piggy, they put on their show, Manhattan Melodies. And of course, they're a big success. So it's the parable of show business done Muppet style.
Just one more question. When you moved from theater to film, did you find the whole atmosphere very different? Did you have to adapt much?
Entirely different. There's a theater, intimate theater family community that is created when you put on a play within 4 walls of a theater. The very proximity of everybody is such that it creates a kind of unity, hopefully, that is positive. And that doesn't exist in film and television because there are so many more people, because there's a whole technical side of it. You're in many, many different places. You're not in a theater building or a workshop building or something. You're traveling, you're out on locations, you may be in a studio sometimes. So that whole working atmosphere is entirely different. And I would say even the hierarchies are very different, and your relationships within them are very different. For a designer, it's still the same in that your primary partner is the director. And that is true in theater also, but your relationships with the other parts of the production are more distant than they are as when you're in the theater building. Of course, the techniques of designing and the execution of your work are entirely different also. In Arthur, John Gielgud, in fact, becomes mortally ill and is in the hospital. It's a little hard to tell in this slide, but the first time we see him in the hospital, he's just in a hospital room that looks like a normal hospital room, very plain. Arthur sees him there and decides, we have to do something about this. And he brings all the furniture and decorations and drapery from Hobson's room in their mansion where they live. And he brings it to the hospital and decorates. And then he brings him all kinds of presents, including a train and a hat. And something about, if I die, take this off my head. And he won the Academy Award for this performance.
No.
This is Arthur's bathtub in his lavish Art Deco bathroom. My thought was that he inherited his family apartment, which was on Park Avenue. Then undoubtedly it was a triplex of the most magnificent style and probably built in the 20s or 30s. And even if the rest of the apartment, and when we see his bedroom, we see Corinthian columns, but the bathrooms were often done in a deco style. And I actually saw a deco bathroom, not as extravagant as this, but I did visit a marble covered Art Deco bathroom that kind of informed an idea for me for this room. And he, of course, has his toys, his sailboat, his music, his cocktail shaker, lily every day, everywhere. And here they're discussing how bathing is a lonely business. And Arthur replies, except for fishes. Line of the scene, people quote back to me, they love it so much. It's so absurdly funny. He does then take the hat off of Arthur and whack him with it. It's a kind of father-son relationship where Hobson, his valet, is very much the man who tries to teach him to grow up and to marry the girl, which he finally does. Here he's driving around in his Rolls Royce with his initials on it. And in fact, in this moment, he's picking up a hooker on Lexington Avenue. He takes to dinner at the Oak Room at the Plaza. And that's loaded with funny one-liners also. This is part of another full floor apartment that he purchases once he makes a lot of money. Oliver had the idea that because it was fashionable in the mid 80s to have a kind of deconstructed look to it with the classical elements, but peeling plaster and Tuscan colors, a little in the entry area to the apartment, which we don't have a slide of, is a Pompeian mural painted in plaster on the wall. So very pretentious decor ideas that the girlfriend character played by Daryl Hannah is portrayed as an interior decorator. So theoretically, this is her taste and her choices of African art mixed with Pompeian Tuscan walls. And God knows what this sculptural chaise lounge is over here on. But each thing had a sense of humor to it, except for here in Gecko's office, the walls are slate. So we made black slate and paneled the walls in that. And that is a genuine Paul Klee painting on the wall. All of the art in Wall Street is a genuine art from various that we rented and were loaned art. We had policemen, we had an art handler, we had guards, we had massive insurance, but had real art everywhere. There was no faked art in this movie. And what you don't see in this shot is there's an actual Picasso, also nearly that large. So this is a
Didn't that run up the budget?
approach. He finally gets in to see Gecko, who's tied up on the phone and barely gives him the time of day. But you can tell by his body language, he's shy and a little afraid of how to approach him. But he does approach him, and they eventually go into business together, to the ruin of both of them, actually. Not so different from even today, the Bitcoin company going bankrupt. Go ahead. Someone commented we had old-fashioned computers. Well, in fact, this was all state-of-the-art equipment when in 1985, when this film was done. It was released in 86, so it's dated 86, but it was done in 85. And that is what on the desk there is what's called a Quotron. It's a system that gives you Wall Street information, a constant feed, and that company provided these monitors for the entire trading floor of the set. And this is, go ahead, the next one. This is actually on location in an office building in downtown New York that looks out at Wall Street. It's a real view there. This is a set built within this location. And the windows here have a gold toned gel on them to give a golden glow to Gecko's view out the windows. And here they are, men of style. And this was a very, this look for Michael Douglas was actually adapted from, but created for Michael Douglas, and all custom made things that became the very influential Wall Street look of the white collar and the suspenders with a collared shirt. That became the Wall Street uniform. And that's Charlie Sheen when he first goes there in a baggy suit that he's then taken to a tailor and told to dress up. Okay, so we jump forward from the movie years to the television years, which began in the later 90s. I started to get work in series television, and I did a number of series, a hospital show, a police show, the usual shows that are done in New York. And then I was asked to do The Good Wife, which certainly everybody has heard of. So this is the entryway to Alicia Florrick's apartment. The concept was that she was separated from her husband and has moved from Highland Park, Illinois, rich suburb of Chicago, to an apartment in an old style Chicago apartment building. So it's spacious, lots of rooms, generous sized living room, all the same qualities that you look for in an upscale New York apartment. This looks through then to her living room. This is all a built set that lasted for 7 years in the studio. It was actually this set was fully taken apart after the first season and moved from one stage to another and reassembled. And another time there was a fire in the lighting equipment that damaged some things, so that had to be restored. And another time during Hurricane Sandy in New York, the stage was flooded. So all the floors had to be restored. But It was the same set for 7 years. The creators of Good Wife then created the show The Good Fight, which actually just this week ran its final episode.
Uh-huh.
And I did the first 3 years of that show, picking up from the character. It no longer involved this set because then Diane Baranski became the leading lady of The Good Fight.
Christine.
Yeah, Christine Baranski, and her character is Diane. And then created rooms for her. This, though, this is still Good Wife, and this is the kitchen in that apartment. Go ahead. Now this is Good. I'm not sure if this is Good Wife or Good Fight, but anyway, this is the boardroom in the law firm. You're looking through a glass wall. You can maybe see a faint line, and you're looking through a glass wall beyond the standing character to the law books. And then there are other pictures. Go ahead. The concept for all of Good Wife, Good Fight, for the law firm that is the center of the whole story, is that it's a fishbowl. So as many walls as possibly could be done in glass, were done in plate glass. And there you're looking on the left side, you're looking out of the conference room, through another office, all the way to the exterior windows, seeing some railing and some buildings outside. So that there's no privacy, and everybody knew what everybody else was doing and what everybody else's story was, working and living in a fishbowl. And this is Christine Baranski and the Chicago skyline, which is a backdrop behind her. And it's interesting to me, the contrast to the background of Gordon Gekko, that was a live background, but we made it golden and beautiful. And here it's a photographic background, and this is a dull, gray, rainy day in her office. This is one of the corner offices when she had a big space. And again, we're in a set, but we're looking out at photographic backdrops. And Venetian blinds were always our friend to help disguise the fact that it was a phony photographic backdrop. That's Michael Fox sitting in a chair there also. It's the same office, different furniture. And this is Michael Sheen, who has come into the firm and taken over some of the spaces. So it's redesigned in a way, same architecture, but different set dressing and different layout of the room for a different character. And a different office for the Diane character, Christine Baranski, because she would move every year. They'd move people around. But to feminize it and give it a bit of her taste is a beautiful Oriental rug to lighten up all the gray that's around her. But you see through layer and layer and layer of glass. So anybody walking around can look in, or she can see who is moving around. There were courtrooms because it was a law show. So this is one of the courtrooms that we built. Paneled walls, of course, and the usual pews and a big gold seal behind the judge. And these rooms would get redone and redressed and rebuilt and so forth as you went to different types of courts, federal courts, civil courts, so forth. Another view of the courtroom. This time we added the large gold bas-relief panels on the sides. And that's Alan Alda standing there as a lawyer. The producers of the show were very keen on having star quality performers, even as guest artists in maybe even one episode. just gave a higher level to the whole show. This is the hallway outside the courtroom.
Oh. Did you have to do a lot of research on courtrooms?
I did. And also the first season of the show, we didn't have the set built. So we were out in real courtrooms all over New York and the Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens. We went to every courtroom that would have us. But the difficult part of that is you could only shoot at nights and on weekends.
Mm-hmm.
That was very difficult for everyone, particularly the cast, to work all night on weekends. Just destroyed everybody. So, and it was always a plan to build a courtroom. It's just we couldn't get it finished in time to open the show because we had the law office and the Floric apartment to get built, and those took 3, 4, 5 months to build. So the courtroom came last. Then this courtroom, this is actually the second courtroom I built. But as we were set in Chicago, I thought I would try to reflect Chicago architecture a bit in the fact he started his career there. So there are just motifs of
So
right
gorgeous.
detail in the finish of the walls of the. And this courtroom is dressed with the red panels. You saw the gold panels in a previous slide. So this is, I believe, a federal court with the big gold eagle and the gold medallions on the walls. The red carpets also. And here's, again, the same room, but dressed differently. Because every week there was a court battle, you know. So we were constantly doing the courtrooms. So this is an area in the law firm where the back office, as it were, where the assistants and the associates work in an open area, open office plan at their computers, doing their research and whatever. Again, it seems to be a gray day outside. This is just a moment in one of the bathroom sets I did that had unbelievably extravagant with gold fixtures and gigantic gold mirror, which told the story of that character at that moment. This is the Diane character, Christine Baranski's living room, which actually sitting room, which adjoins her bedroom, which you'll see, I believe, in the next picture. A detail of that room with an elegant dogwood kind of wallpaper and nice art, reflecting her very refined character. And that's the opposite view, looking back from the fireplace end, looking towards where the bed end of it. And the idea is it's in a brownstone. So the arch, which is typical of Brooklyn brownstones and New York brownstones, often have a archway between the front room and the back room. So we emphasize that here. And she's with her husband is standing there, Gary Cole, the actor. And where would we be without cell phones? That's how they tell the stories these days. But again, that's her bedroom in the background. We're on location here at another law firm in the library, having a meeting. But this is the kind of place we would go out to quite often. So I'm showing this now because this is the exact same set as Diane's living room and bedroom, but completely redone. New wallpaper, all the trims painted black, everything's changed, all the furniture. We changed the fireplace has changed, the lighting has changed. This is for a different character. This was for the Martin Sheen character, who was a sexual predator and a wild man, but he was part of the firm for one season. So we had to see his apartment at that point. It also had magical hidden doorways that you could open up and disappear. Though his house had tunnels in it. Here we're on location, a women's resistance group. It's a crypt in the bottom of a very large church in New York. And there's a meeting of women. Sort of secret group. Oh, this is my IMDb link that they have posted.
Fantastic.
Okay.
So gorgeous. The
Well, thank you.
courtrooms and the bedrooms. I want them all. That bathtub
Can I ask a
especially.
question, Stephen? I'm interested in the budgeting. Do they tell you how much you have to play with, or do you tell them what it's going to cost and then you haggle about it?
It's more the latter. What it's going to cost is never what they have anticipated.
It's always more.
Of course.
Following
Probably.
up on-
Probably, if we could ask Marty Overstreet, she'd probably even say that about me, you know?
Following up on the budget, in
You can
Wall Street, why was it important to have real art?
Who's asking?
That's J.L. Smith.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
In Wall Street, Oliver is a serious art collector. And he also had personal relationships with Arnie Glimcher of Pace Gallery and other gallerists. So we had access. So he did not want fake art. There's something dead about fake art on movie walls. So we had access to the real thing, and we could pick and choose. And we had real art wherever we needed it. I think we could not get a Georgia O'Keeffe. So we made a fake one of that in the beach house, but the others are real.
I was just wondering that, if in order to save money, if
No saving.
if it would really possible for us in the audience to tell the difference.
The concern was that, yes, people, at least some of the audience, knows the difference between what a scenic might have painted and what Paul Klee painted, or what Picasso painted.
Okay, thank you.
We did paint a fake Picasso based on a photograph we had, and it was just terrible. It was so terrible. It didn't take 1 second to realize, well, that's a prop,
Okay.
and it didn't work, so we didn't use it. But because the Picasso was so extravagantly valued, they were reluctant to use it. But in the end, I don't remember if we had an armored car or what. I doubt if we had an armored car, but we had professional art handlers always. And they would handle it and deal with it. And it lends an authenticity. I mean, we were essentially doing a documentary of 1985. And that's what Wall Street is. The looks, the attitudes, the locations, the fact that they did shoot in the stock exchange and what it looked like then and that day we were there. Now it's all different. Now it's flat screens and completely different. But that's a documentary scene of life on Wall Street in the real New York Stock Exchange in there. Those were really the restaurants that those people ate at. That was a real beach house in Bridgehampton that was built by a Wall Street financier on the beach that we had access to and we shot in for a week. So it's what you're seeing there is the real thing.
We have a question in the chat here. After designing all these beautiful spaces, what does your own home look like? Were you influenced by your work?
It's just gorgeous. Inside the front door is the Long Island Sound with beautiful beach on it. And outside the back door, I have the view of Wall Street and skyscrapers. And on the other side, there's a theater with a curtain and all these little characters around. Well, to be honest, we live in a very old house built in 1806 in northeastern Pennsylvania. It's a very big house. It was an inn at one point, so there are 6 or 7 bedrooms upstairs. And we have a lot of property around us and woods and fields and so forth. And it's been in Callista's family her whole life, as her great grandparents bought it. So it's come down through the generations, through her family to us. And now we're the caretakers, and we've spent a lot of time and a lot of money from the Good Wife and the Good Fight maintaining and fixing it up. But I do have to thank my television career for making that possible, because you can imagine a 200-year-old house needs some.
Where is Callista? Where is she?
Callista, come up here now, could you?
Keep talking about her.
To bring her,
Stephen, Tony here, Tony Dallas.
where are you? I don't.
I'm somewhere up there.
There, you've got green around
Okay.
you now.
Tony,
I was wondering, with the Good Wife,
I love.
you spoke about the fishbowl offices.
First of all, here's Callista,
Hey,
Yeah,
Callista.
Hi, hi.
who's been with me every minute of every single thing that you saw. Married here, not in the house, but in the yard of this house in 1967. And we're back here, living all over the place, back here. I'll push this out a little bit, included. Can you see us both there?
Yeah,
Yes.
yep.
Who do I recognize?
This is Tony Dallas.
Is
Here's,
this-
here's Whitney in the middle.
Whitney. Hi, Whitney.
Oh, I see. Hi, Whitney.
Stephen.
Right, I'm
Tony, you had a question.
Yeah, just the organization of the offices. You described it like a fishbowl,
Yes.
but what seemed to me sort of so important was the configuration of the offices, and the fact that sound did not travel through those glass walls. And so I was wondering, was the configuration of the offices and whose office was where? Was that, it must have been very important to the structuring of the stories. And also, did it end up influencing the evolution of episodes?
Well, very much, because first of all, the law firm was divided into what was known as the upstairs, the 22nd floor, and the lower floor, which was called the 21st floor, that the lower level workers all worked downstairs. So in the first season, Alicia Florrick had a little office on the 21st floor. It did have a glass wall, one that looked out onto the other people, but she wasn't up there with the executive. She'd been promoted. So once the story got her promoted, everything had to be rearranged. So every year, the whole configuration of who had what office and what the shape of the office was, we rebuilt every year. Conference room was always in the middle.
Yeah.
concept of fishbowl was always there, but who sat where and how we worked out of who was adjacent to whom and who got the corner and who was down the hall, that would change. Every season was a different, a rebuild every year. Every August or July or August, we would go back to work, tear down half of it and put it back together, because Robert King and Michelle King, the writers, first of all, they would bring in new people, new cast people who had to have space. And they had a thought of what the relationships were, who was close, who needed to be close and who didn't need to be close, and who wanted to be isolated, and who was downstairs and who was upstairs. That was all in their mind. So my job was then to work out the ground plan of how it could fit within the absolutely limited space we had. The outer perimeter never changed. The outer full of windows was the building. You know, as though we were, that was it. It didn't change. It couldn't.
Right.
We have another question. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Nancy.
I wanted to ask Stephen, moving from theater to film and television, did you miss that thing of being so involved in expressing exactly what the play is about, you know, from beginning to end, that whole idea of the concept of the play and working closely with the director? Did you miss that relationship?
I did, but it had to be a bigger concept. It had to be a concept that could hopefully apply to the whole film and unify it. Even though and the same with The Good Wife and The Good Fight. Conceptually, the tones, the textures, the stylish look had to be consistent throughout the whole show, not just a set. There would be, for instance, when we changed Diane's to the red apartment, there were things that jumped out of the palette. In other words, it was red, not the soft seagrass, gray blues that the other apartment was, but the level of style had to be maintained. So that's what made it different from theater. For me.
You were able to have a relationship with the directors about that?
Yes, always. Always at the, we get our script and immediately you have a production meeting with the director and the producer. And I get their input. I mean, and the writers, the writers have visualized these people in more depth than I have. And Robert and Michelle King have embodied them as though they are their own family. So they know what they need and what they want to see and who these people are. So it's then our job with my decorator, Beth Kushnick, who was brilliant throughout, to interpret that and get it there for them. But there was always that at the beginning with the director, with the producer, to get all the input.
We have a question here in the chat. In God We Trust, as a California lawyer, neither state or federal courtrooms was that on the walls, and especially behind the judge, in my experience. Was this the case on the East Coast or a part of the story's theme?
It's always there in every courtroom we went to.
Okay. Another question was, are you still working? And might you have access to co-op jobs or people after they've graduated who are looking for work in New York,
Okay, briefly, I'm not still working. The day the hit New York, I retired. That was March 13th, 3 years ago. I was on a pilot. I was doing, we had done 2 or 3 weeks of work preparing this show, and everything was shut down. All productions were shut, the theaters were shut, television was shut, movies were shut, everything was. I came up here, Callista was already here, and that was it. I had always said, I was 79 then, and I'm not going to be working when I'm 80. So it was the perfect, and I'm not, I'm very busy here with the local theater, but not in terms of set designing, but I do other work with them, and I've just spent a couple of weeks installing a new lighting system, and I'm also, some of you know, I annually make a Christmas display that goes into the theater, so I'm in the middle of doing that right now also. But that's manageable, containable, and I do it all myself. I don't have to work with a producer, a writer, a budget, cinematographer, or all the other people you have to work with when you are working in a communal organization. But I'm busy.
Sarah,
When I- Oh, I'm
Sarah,
sorry.
you have a question.
Yes. Hi, Sarah Albertson. I don't know if you remember me, Stephen and Callista,
Hi,
but I was this.
You're cut off at the nose.
can we move the picture, the
I don't
images
know.
down? Oh,
Maybe,
there you go. Hi, Sarah.
oh,
Hi. Can you see me now?
Yes,
Jan,
yes.
hi.
Hi. I was a student when you came back to design the shows in the summer, and I remember those shows. They were really amazing. And I just remember how kind and open you were to me. And I just wanted to say hi. I haven't seen you for decades.
That's a nice memory. Thank you.
I
had
asked about New York because the co-op department is trying to find production jobs in New York City, and neither Robin Rice nor I had any knowledge of any, at least anything that would pay. And we thought you might know.
Well, I don't. I'm 3 years away from being involved with any productions. I can say it would be problematic given the nature of television production and how almost everything is union, requires a union membership. And even the productions I worked on are now defunct. And as I said, Good Fight ended it ended production 4 months ago, but it ended its run yesterday. So I'm very much out of the loop of what's happening.
David?
Hi, I just wanted to take this chance to say hi to Stephen. We tried to connect this summer and didn't quite make it. And we had time together back in the day in school. We did a show together, actually, from our co-op job, where we put on a production, which was a light show, which was remarkably ahead of its time. We were reflecting lights off of pans full of oil onto a white checkered background and doing things this in 1960, or perhaps it was 61. You might remember better than me, Stephen. But anyways, just wanted to say hi. And I entered with Stephen and Kirsten.
Yes, I'm very glad to see you, David. And I remember that light show so well. It was a high point. I still have a few of those slides. I don't have all of them, but I still have a few of the slides I had taken on the co-op job prior to that, used in that show.
I just want to mention to David that my mother fell in love with you after you played Nathan Detroit. She just loved it.
It was great fun. Unfortunately, it was my swan song. I was already kicked off the campus and only allowed on to be on stage. And that was the last I was at Antioch. I was a bad boy back then. So I entered with Stephen and Kirsten and exited with Nathan Detroit.
Jemmy?
We have something in the Helen Welford wanted, she thanks you so much for sharing all these wonderful images and the way you thought about process. Oh, I'm sorry, that's Louise's comment. And then someone is so wonderful to see Whitney and hear about Stephen's terrific career. I still have clear memories of Stephen's fantastic production and Nancy's beautiful direction. And then
Jemmy?
Helen Welford similarly, thank you. I admired you all when I was in high school helping at the theater. And my mother, Janet Welford, enjoyed working with you all too. So
Jemmy?
2 generations.
Jemmy?
Could we all go through and just say our names? Because I'm sort of recognizing people, but I would like to know who everybody is. I'm Jemmy Faust.
It's a wonderful group. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just great. I'm so happy to see so many old friends. Just terrific. So where do you want to start, Jemmy?
I don't care. I just, it's been a long time.
Jemmy, don't you see the names of people on all of the?
I don't
screens?
know. Can you see the names when you click?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
I
Sorry.
see all the names, but maybe
Okay.
you don't. I
Make
don't know.
sure you're on.
Oh, yeah,
gallery
you're right.
view.
You're right. Okay.
Make sure you're on gallery view.
So I was-
I would like,
Some people who the last names we don't see, and I wonder if they would give us their last name. I see Sue. Let's see, I will.
yes,
Whitney used to call me Suzanne.
So you're Suzanne.
Fred. That was my Antioch name. I was a theater major and an actor in those years.
Ah,
Yes.
Okay.
and
Yeah.
Ralph.
I'd just like to say, Jemmy, and Sue and I spent a whole summer sewing like mad in that
Yes.
one room.
Yeah.
And Whitney was one of our supervisors, and we sewed and sewed and sewed for hours on end. So it's really funny to think we're all still here. It's incredible.
Wonderful.
So Ralph is
Ralph Lowenstein of Antioch 61. And I always think of Stephen as an actor, particularly in the Inspector General.
Oh, my goodness.
You'll always be an actor to me.
Where's Ralph?
You know, that
Oh, there. Oh, my goodness.
how about Peter, who has an iPhone?
Peter?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm a
let's
friend
see.
of Stephen's. I didn't go to Antioch. I knew Stephen and Callista when I first came to New York and was with Karen, who went to Antioch. So I've been friends since then.
We can still know your last name, though.
Oh, it's Peter Beauchamp.
Okay.
I'm a sound radio guy.
Uh-huh.
Stephen's been one of my collaborators for a number of those years.
And
Great.
Peter should drive me to the hospital to have my first baby.
Right, in my 56 Cadillac.
How about Roger?
I'm not Roger. Roger's my husband, and this is his screen. I'm Gene Erickson, and I knew Stephen,
Oh, hi.
I think in the summer of '62, we did The Importance of Being Earnest.
Oh, yes.
And Stephen and I traveled around collecting furniture, and then we pulled a raid on a Victorian house that was going to be torn down and stole a stained glass window.
Ooh.
I hope you still have it. Anyway, it was great fun.
I don't think it's from that raid.
Oh,
I have in my studio. It's just about 6 inches wide and 2 feet high.
no, this was an overstory kind of call it a clear story window.
Did
Anyway,
we use that?
I'm sorry.
Did we use it in the set?
No, I think we just wanted it, and you ended up.
But you know, I came across a photo of a dorm room of mine with a big stained glass piece in the window
That's
that
probably
I
the one.
put there, and I wondered where that came from because I didn't remember it.
It was when they were tearing down all big houses in Dayton, so we
Yeah.
just felt free to go in there and take it, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
So Ralph, you remember me an Inspector General, which I don't remember at all. But the only thing that I remember is at Trotwood in the Playboy of the Western World. I had to be a drunk townie in the bars. And of course I was sure.
We've mentioned this before, but for people who don't know, Marty Overstreet kept a typed list of, or made up a typed list for everyone who was ever involved in the theater, whether it was set design or costumes or acting. And you can get in touch with Antiochiana, with Scott Sanders, and get a copy. He'll email you a copy of your card.
Okay.
Paula, where will all of the videos of these interviews be available?
It's not in my hands.
Well, whose hands is it in? Jesse?
I don't know.
We're looking for hands.
Jesse, do you know?
Well, as we get them edited, because we don't want to put a raw material up, we can put them on the college's YouTube channel. And Neela, yours is up there already.
Yeah, I wondered if my interview was the only one that has.
Yours is the only one that's been edited, which you managed yourself, which is great. And we're about to get help in learning to edit videos from Peter Labermeyer, who is also running a series like this. And he's going to be talking to a group this month, later this month. So hopefully we'll get more of these edited and up on the YouTube channel.
And
If
then
any of you would like to volunteer to do
Yes.
some editing,
We're looking to,
and then
we're
will you
looking
put
to
the,
create
the link
word-
to that channel on the Theater and Performance Digest.
Yes, we're looking to create a WordPress, basically website that will have links to these recordings, to these sessions, photographs that people have sent in, and stories that people have related about their times in the theater at Antioch.
Wouldn't this be a great co-op job for a theater student?
yes.
So we're looking for
Yes.
WordPress people who are WordPress savvy.